solution to a problem. And that problem is simple. We're getting firefighters sucker punched by hostile fire events at a rate we haven't seen in this country, right? This so-called new fire, the new societally influenced fire, is trapping firefighters. We have so many close calls. I receive literally emails every week, if not twice a week, of firefighters that had a close call with a hostile fire event. And most of the time, these hostile fire events are as simple as smoke ignition. It's finding that right temperature and that right mixture while firefighters are in limited visibility smoke. Things light up and people have to bail. Well, you're the solution to that. We can't have any more flashovers. We can't have more firefighters getting caught in hostile fire events. We have to master that environment. We have to master that environment. And the start of mastering that environment is just recognition. It's your ability to take a few seconds of information, and that's really all it takes is a few seconds of you visualizing what's happening at your incident, use your reading smoke skills, and make better decisions about how you're going to engage. And I've said this many times, and I think it goes appropriate to start this class off. So many firefighters and so many fire departments in this country are what I call, and this is my observation, what I call arbitrarily aggressive. Fire departments are arbitrarily aggressive. They're aggressive because that's what's expected of us in the community. They're aggressive because that's what we've always done. But it's that same aggressiveness in an arbitrary way that's getting us sucker punched. We know that rapid rate of change is the new norm in today's world. So reading smoke has become this absolutely essential skill. So in many ways, we have to flip from being arbitrarily aggressive to being intellectually aggressive. And that intellectual aggressiveness comes from situational awareness. And the starting place of situational awareness, as Dr. Rich Gasaway says all the time, is gathering cues and clues. Right? Then you've got to comprehend those cues and clues. And that's what reading smoke is all about. Now, if you can gather the cues and clues about what the smoke is telling you, you understand what is going on, we use that as the foundation to predict what's going to happen next. And that's what reading smoke is all about. It's about your ability to figure out where's the fire, how big's the fire, what's the fire going to do next. Right? Now, in the short amount of time that we have together, right, we want to give you some assistance in doing that. Now, I'm the first one to say that reading smoke, to really understand its theory, its concepts, its application, etc., is best handled in one day. But I know many of you have had a formal reading smoke class, and you use this FDIC opportunity as an opportunity to practice your skills. So I want to give you some of that practice. Now, as I've done the last 2 years, I've blown up the PowerPoint. We're not going to do any PowerPoint, right? Okay. And we're just going to do fire video. That's what we're going to do today, is some fire video. And I've selected some are classics that I can't replace, and I know I see them on your critique sheet, and trust me, I read every single one of them, even from a movie this big, I read every single critique. Some people say, you need some new video. Well, I keep looking for those great examples, right? And I've got to get permission to use them and all that kind of stuff, and I willingly put in that effort, and I do spend hours and hours and hours. But know that I did find some new video for those of you that like to see new examples that you've never seen before. Just remember, there are people in this room that have never seen a reading smoke presentation, so I like to use some of those classic examples to get them dialed into the whole process. Now, most of you know that reading smoke is a process, and like any process, there's some application guidelines. Like we know that there's no absolute about reading smoke. It's not a perfect thing. That's actually why I call it the art of reading smoke, and not necessarily the science of reading smoke. Although, thanks to all of our good friends in NIST and UL Labs and the Polytech Institutes and some of our big fire departments and the resources they've put together, we're beginning to understand the science part of this so much more than we had even 20 years ago. So the science is coming along, right? But reading smoke is not an absolute thing. Therefore, the art of reading smoke. What we have discovered, though, is there are some patterns, there are some rapid recognition tools that work most of the time. want to share those with you as part of our afternoon together, right? And our reading smoke process is kind of, well, it's the classic adult decision-making process. And by that I mean it's like step one, you've got to look at volume, velocity, density, color. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Step two, you've got to compare it to the box and the outside weather. Make sure the weather isn't influencing what you're seeing. And then step three, make a judgment about the future, right? Not what is happening, but what's about to happen in terms of fire behavior. So that's our basic process for reading smoke. Now, as we jump in and start looking at some examples, maybe a really good place to start would be to maybe explore this notion that smoke has multiple attributes. All right. Computer went to sleep. We set it up half an hour ago. And we're locked. This is like that embarrassing moment on stage. You're supposed to know your computer really, really well. I just did my whole technology update. And this is about the fourth time out with this computer. It does stuff on its own.
Well, folks, it's going to take us half this hour to get your shit ready. Everybody go take a pee break.
We even practiced this for half hour this morning. So, we go for our good guys. I wish I could talk and tell you and fill in all the blanks and do this at the same time, but I'm not that talented. Okay, got to start. Something came up. All right, video coming to you. Thank you for your patience there. Successful reboot. So what do you see? Hearing nothing, I'll show it to you again. So what do you see? Who said fire? Did you miss the title of this class? No, actually, that's kind of a fun thing to do. You know, challenge number one to reading smoke is basically orange. That orange is something that we're attracted to. I mean, not in a sixth sense, all right? It's just that it is psychologically attractive to us. Why? Because that's our end game. Wet stuff on the red stuff problem goes away, right? And it's also what's been kind of beat into our brain. Find the fire, find the fire, find the fire, kind of stuff. So challenge number one is you've got to look away from the orange. Don't get me wrong, you guys. Wet stuff on the red stuff is the solution, right? But a fifth grader knows that. What we want to do is figure out what is that fire going to do next. That's our challenge. And in the words words of my now good friend but longtime mentor, John Mittendorf. John Mittendorf said this back in 1984. He said, watch the smoke. It's the fire talking to you and it's telling you the future. Well, if we're going to make tactical decisions, we need to know not what the fire is doing, but what's the fire about to do. And we'll make better tactical solutions. So look around at the smoke.
Pushing it.
We know we got a good post-flash over human contents. Everybody knows that. It's what the smoke is doing that's more disturbing. So what have you noticed here? Yeah, we might have fire venting out a back window on side D, but you actually look at side A. We have smoke under pressure coming out of the gable, right? Out of the gable cracks and seams and trim boards. So we have a lot of pressure in the attic spaces, or as some people call the cock loft. Now look at that smoke. That smoke, believe it or not, has distinguishing characteristics. It has volume, it has velocity, it has density, and it has color, VVDC. And even though we don't do this consciously on the fire ground, what we need to do in terms of learning about reading smoke is kind of make sure that you follow that process every time. Every time you look at smoke, consciously think about its volume, its velocity, its density, and its color. Now, we're going to get into how those influence predicting what a fire is, but that's kind of our starting place for reading smoke. You've got to kind of classify VVDC. Now, once you look at VVDC from one part of the building or one window opening, now we have to compare it to another part of the building or opening. What are the differences in VVDC? Volume, velocity, density, color. And that's what gives you your reading smoke solution. So start looking at some of the differences in VVDC. Now obviously just down and dirty, closer to the fire it's what? Darker and, right? Much more fast, a lot more energy. And what we're going to learn today is that velocity is king. The velocity, the energy in movement of that smoke probably is telling us the greatest story about what is happening. And that becomes the starting place for figuring out what's going to happen next. So, the velocity of smoke is a huge thing. We can compare the various velocities, but the velocity here, coming out this window and this window, are so much greater than the other windows, obviously because they're closer. Now, what has changed? Right, we're starting to get a lot more push, a lot more volume, and even starting to color up a little bit of the smoke coming out the gable end on side A. So, getting better or worse? Seconds or minutes? Good, our rate of change, we've only watched 1 minute of video, so our rate of change is now being measured in seconds, which means what for us? We might be behind the power curve on this one, just behind the power curve a little bit. So this is good fire department, this Buffalo Fire Department. They'll be on this in no time flat. Right? So that's kind of our starting place. Challenge number one is stop watching the orange. I mean, we know we got to deal with the orange, right? But that's the simple part, right? We have to look past the orange, start looking at the smoke. What do we watch it for? We watch it for volume, velocity, density, color. And then we look at comparison of the volume, velocity, density, color, right? That's comparing it to the box. Where do you see smoke? Where don't you see smoke? And where you do see smoke, what's the differences in VVDC, right? Obviously, we've got to kind of make sure that the weather's not messing you up, and then finally make that judgment. What's going to happen next? And that's kind of based on that whole concept. Is it getting better, worse, seconds, or